Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today what I want to show you is 3 intermediate weaves, which are right here. I'm going to show you how to do them step by step. I call them intermediate because they're using 5 strands of wire. Now, 3 different types. I can hold them up for you. There's one in silver here, which has created these kind of triangle shapes. There's one here that is kind of what I call like an Art Deco style kind of pattern, which is lovely. And this one I love because I focused on doing this weave on the top, but actually if I flip this one over, it looks really cool on the other side too. So I really enjoy that one because you could use it either way, but I suggest creating it this way and then choosing which side you want to use, because that's slightly more complicated. Even though you're doing the same thing, it's slightly more complicated to figure out. So yeah, these are our 3 weaves using 5 strands. There are some simpler weaves. I have another video that is slightly simpler because we only use 2 and 3 strands of wire. The reason this is more complicated is because the more wire you use, the kind of harder it gets. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with this triangular kind of pattern here. And I'm going to use a different coloured wire just to show you what it looks like. So you can see it here in silver, but I'm just going to use a different coloured wire now just to show you what it would be like. Now, generally, and you will hear this from me most of the time, the wires I like to use are a 20 gauge wire and oh, I've got 2 20 gauge wires there. No, put that one down, and a 26 gauge. So I'm going to do this triangular one in antique bronze, and all of these are made using the 20 gauge and the 26 gauge. So what we do is the 20 gauge wire is what we use for our strands, and the 26 gauge wire is what we use for wrapping. If you get confused about wire gauges, there is a video on my channel that talks to you all about wire gauges, and you can learn about them there. But for now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off. It doesn't matter how long, because at the moment I'm just showing you how to do it. Obviously, if you're making something specific, you would measure your wire and make sure you've got the right amount. But I am just showing you an example for now. So I know that I need to cut off 5 pieces of wire roughly the same length, and I can get started on showing you this triangular weave. So the easiest way for me that I find to do this is by starting with 1 strand and adding them, rather than holding all your strands like this and trying to start your weave. I find that a lot more difficult for some reason, and it doesn't end up being as neat. So the way I do it is I get my 5 strands at the ready, and then we get our 26 gauge wire, and then we can start wrapping. So you'll find that this happens quite a lot. So to get organised, I pull off a little bit of wire, but I don't want to cut it yet because I don't know how much I'm going to need. So what I do is I just do a little bit of a twist around the little kind of hook, and then I don't have the wire zooming off and flying all over the place. So let's get started on this first weave. So we pick up our first piece of wire, and all I do just to start off with is just give it a couple of wraps around the base. Now the actual weave doesn't start like that, but it's just, it doesn't matter what this end bit looks like, because you're going to finish it off in a different way if you're using this as part of an actual structure to create something. So I need to make sure my pieces are as straight as they can be, so I just use my fingers to straighten them out. And then we go 1 wrap around that base wire, and then we're going to wrap around both wires. So I've just added 1, and I'm wrapping around both. Then I'm going to bring my next piece of wire in, and what I do is I try and make sure that they're all lined up so that we've not got longer and shorter pieces. And then I'm going to wrap it around all 3, and then bring my 4th piece of wire in. Again, make sure it's nice and straight. Wrap it around all 4. And then I'm going to bring in my 5th piece of wire, and I'm going to wrap it around all 5. Now, you can actually make this as long as you like, really, as wide as you like. So you could add 6 strands, 7 strands, but for now I'm just showing you how to do it with 5. Obviously, the more you add, the fiddlier it gets. But I like to just hold on nice and tight to the end of my wire. And then the one piece, strangely enough, I'm going to tell you a little story. I never used to use these flat-nosed pliers because I always thought that I could do the job with my needle nose pliers, and these were the first pair that I actually bought. And to be honest, I just thought, well, what do you need those for? Then when I bought them, I realised the difference it made with all of my weaves. It makes them so much flatter and neater, and it's just so much better. So definitely need to invest in a pair of flat-nosed pliers. And what I do once I've got all 5 is I squash this down and I make sure that they're all really nice and flush together. And then we start working our way back down. So we've already got our wrap around the 5, and we take it down around 4, and then around 3, and then around the 2, and then around the 1. And what I try to do as I go, I'm pulling it quite tight, but, and here's something that can happen, and it did happen to me, if you pull it too tight, this base wire just goes really wonky, and then you'll get this kind of wiggle in your wrap, and you don't want that to happen because you want this really kind of nice straight edge going on. So what I've done now is I've created my first triangle. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my flat-nosed pliers again, and I'm just going to squash it together and squash it down, and you can see the difference as I do that it makes to the look of my triangle. So what I'm going to do is continue that. I'm just going to show you 1 or 2 more times because I can show you the finished product as well. I just wanted to show you how to do the basics. But just to keep it really tight, I'm holding on really tightly. You can see the lines in my fingers. You can get a tool to actually hold all the ends, but I find it really impractical. And actually, I just find it easier to hold on to it. But it's entirely up to you what you find easier, really. So then we're going to start again, wrap it once around the 1, then we're wrapping it again around the 2. And as we did before, I'm trying to keep my wires nice and straight as I go. And then I wrap it around the 3 and around the 4 and around the 5. And I'm keeping it nice and tight, but I don't want to pull too hard, and it can warp the top as well because there's only 1 wrap around that 5th wire. You can get these bends in it and it just ends up looking messy, but it does take practice because I used to have it looking really messy and wiggly and bendy all the time. But it's just learning the right tension that you need so you don't pull too hard, but then you're also not too loose. So do this again. I'm going to wrap down now. So go around the 4, the 3. And they do cross over sometimes. The 2 and the 1. And then I am going to get my pliers again, and I'm going to squash that down. You'll find that now I use these pliers more than I use any of the others, really, because I've just found how neat and precise it makes the wraps. So I'm just going to do that 1 more time just to show you exactly how to do it, and then we'll move on to the second one. So let's do this again. Wrap it around the 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5. Get my pliers back in, and I often just give it a little nudge with the edge of the pliers as well, just to make it really nice and tight and flush up against each other, because it really does look really pretty, this one. I mean, they all look pretty in their different ways, and they'd also look different with the different coloured wires, which is why I want to show you each one in a different coloured wire as well. So I'm just going to finish this one off and then show you how it looks. So again, I think if I hold this up to you, I think you can see how it kind of lumps, it kind of bubbles when you don't use your pliers, so it ends up looking a bit messier. So then once we squash it down and we push it together, you can really see the difference there from how it looked before. So there you go. This is our little triangular weave. And a little tip for you here is, I've said before, you can add more wires and make it thicker, or you can actually do more weaves. So you could do 2 weaves around each one, and it just kind of stretches it out, makes it look a bit different. Just experiment with it, really. The central piece that goes around all 5, you could do maybe 2 or 3 twists, and it just makes it look a bit different. But I'll bring this one back in again just to show you. There's a longer strand in the silver, and that's as in the antique bronze. So really pretty. I make bracelets using this pattern, and then I kind of add beads and create things using that. I think it's a really, really pretty one for bracelets. So that is our first weave. Now I'm going to move on to the second one, which is this one, which I call the slightly Art Deco pattern. Now this one is slightly more complicated, and it's just getting into a rhythm really of how you actually twist it. So same again, I am going to go with, I think, a copper wire just to show you it looking a bit different. Again, we've got our 20 gauge and our 26 gauge, and I'm going to cut off our 5 strands and we'll show you how to do this one. This one you could probably mix up a bit by adding more gaps in between, or not adding any gaps in between and just doing it in a row. That would be interesting to see how that one looks. It's all about playing about with them really. It's once you know the basics and how to create the pattern, you can just alter them slightly and have a little play around. So here I've got my 5 strands again. And same again, exactly the same process to start with, is taking your first one and adding them in rather than trying to hold all 5 at the same time. So we'll start with our copper wire, and I am going to wrap it to start my weave 5 times around there. I'm going to bring in my next one. And what I want to do is wrap it once around the bottom, and then it's going to go, this is going to be hard to explain, so really it's about watching what I'm doing, because I'm not sure I'm very articulate in explaining. So we've wrapped it once around both, and then we're going to go in to that one we just added, so in between, and bringing in our next one, so that when we actually wrap, we're wrapping it around just those 2, and then again I'm going to bring it through the middle, and we're just going to wrap around those 2. So I'm bringing in my next wire, my 4th wire, and I'm just making sure that they're all neat and in line there. And then I will show you closer up if I can. So again, same process, back into the middle of the one you just added, and then we get our last wire and we wrap it around. So you could add more strands on this as well and just keep going the same process, making it longer. I think it's easier at the moment just for me to show you how to do this with the 5. So then now that I've wrapped around there, what I want to do is make sure that it's nice and straight. So I get my flat nosed pliers again and I pull it nice and straight. And then we want one wrap that goes right the way through the middle. So all the way over all 5 wires. And then we want to mirror what we just did on the other side, so it's actually not quite the same. So what we're going to do, because we've now got all of our wires in, we go back down and we do wrap it around the top 2, and then we go in between the 3. This is what gets really confusing. In between, if you can see what I'm doing nice and close, I've taken it down between these 3 strands, and I'm only going to take it back over those 2, leaving the top one free. And then I'm going to go again down to the next level and only going over the next 2, so leaving the top 2 free. And I use my fingers just to push it down a bit. And then the last one will be doing a wrap around these bottom 2. So it's slightly complicated in the explanation, but hopefully you can see exactly what I'm doing and be able to follow that. And then I squash them together, and again, just to make them look flatter. So I get a bit of cramp in my hand because I hold on to them so tight to try and make sure that they don't move. And there's our first section of that pattern. So I want to make sure that it's really nice and flush. It's almost like a little leaf pattern. It's really pretty, this just coming out of the wire as we developing as we go. I really like how it all emerges. So we will continue that process now. I'll show you again and try to explain it. So we're going to do our 5 wraps. So we've got a little gap in between. As I said, you could actually just do this pattern continuously without the little 5 in between, but I just think it adds that little bit extra to the pattern. Up to you if you want to do something a bit different and experiment. So that's our 5 wraps in between, and then we start this process again, but as we've got all the wires in, it's slightly different. So now we want to wrap around the first 2 like so. Then we want to go in between, I think that's the easiest way to explain it, the 2 that you just wrapped. So in between the 2 you just wrapped, and then we wrap over the next 2, and in between the 2 you just wrapped. Haha, we found a new way of explaining it. Then we go over the next 2, and again in between the 2 you just wrapped. Bit fiddly. And then over the last 2. And then again, you can see it's not straight. That's fine, because that's how it happens as you work on it. Use your flat-nosed pliers just to move it down again. And then we wrap around all of them. And then we bring it back down again. So we bring that back down for you. Confusion face. The wires can get a little bit crossed over sometimes. Just take your time. Don't rush it. Plenty of time, but just keep straightening out your wires as you go. Otherwise, you might find you get into a bit of a tangle, and then that's a bit unfortunate because you won't be able to carry on. So going back down, I've wrapped over the top 2. Then we're going to go down and take it through the 3. You can see what I mean. I've left those top 3 and it's come in between. And then I leave out that 5th one at the top, and I wrap around 2. And then I go down and I wrap around the next 2. And then down again and wrap around the last 2. And there you go. That's our little Art Deco weave there. So I'm going to push it down with my pliers and give it a squash again. Always, as you go, just keep working on it one by one. If you do lots of them and then try and squash them down, it ends up kind of changing the look of it a little bit. So that's why I work on each section and I use my pliers to squash it down. So that is what it looks like in copper. So you can see our leaf pattern emerging. If I bring the other one back in for you again, you can see it as a longer pattern like that in our antique bronze. Really effective, a really different one actually. I really like this weave. I like all of them, you know, I say that a lot, don't I? I think they're all really pretty, and they're all really different. So now we're going to go with this copper one. I'm going to do it in silver wire to see what the difference is. And as I said, if you focus just on doing this pattern, you will end up with two patterns, which is great. I really think that the other one looks quite effective as well, but depends on which one you want to use. So on to number 3. I shall show you how to do that one. And where's my silver wire? Right. And again, as I said before, 26 gauge in our silver plated copper wire. And I'll just chop off my 5 strands and we can get started on this last weave. Believe me, when I first started, it did not look this neat. It takes a little while, it takes a little bit of practice, and it is a bit of a strain on your fingers sometimes, but I love it. Love doing it. Find it really therapeutic. I could just sit there all day doing it. And the only problem with owning your own business is you don't get to sit there all day doing it. You get to do your admin as well. That's never fun. Right, so I've got my 5 strands. And again, with this one, add more if you want to. Put more strands in. It's just an extra weave. It's just an extra turn. And you can make it wider. This one, I think, would make a really nice bracelet. I'd really like to try and make a bracelet out of that one. So watch this space. I might do that for you. And let's start off with... Kind of got to remind myself. No, I do know how to do it. Right, so... Again, I'm going to start with 1 strand and I'm going to bring the other ones in. So just wrap it around a couple of times just to get some security on that one. This one does take a long time, not going to lie. That one definitely took me the longest to create, to show you the example. And it's quite fiddly, but looks really nice. Right, so I've got it secured around there and I'm going to bring in the next one. So what we do is reminding myself, yes, we go once around the bottom layer, once around the next one, then we bring in the next piece and we go once around there, but then that's where the similarities of the triangle stop, because what we want to do then is we actually want to miss out that bottom one, bring in our 4th wire, and we want to wrap it round just those 3. Then we miss out the bottom 2 and bring in our 5th wire. I will show you this a couple of times so that you can get the hang of it, because this one is a little bit tricky. But yeah, then we want to wrap it round all 3, missing out the bottom 2 wires. Then we come back in to the last 2 and then we just wrap the last 1 that we've just added there. So that creates our initial pattern, and then we bring the line, the whole wire, all the way across the back, and then we start that process again. So that's why you get that different pattern on the other side. That also looks really cool. So again, I've made sure that all of my pieces are all aligned and straight, because if you want to turn this into a bracelet, into a pendant, you want to be able to have all of those ready to kind of turn into either the bail or some kind of loop to finish off whatever it is that you decide to make. So again, I'm going to bring in my flat nose pliers and I'm going to give that a squash down, and it really makes a difference to the pattern again, because when you initially wrap, it just kind of sits off the wire a little bit and looks a bit bubbly or bobbly, and then when you squash it down and you flatten it, it just creates this really neat straight pattern. So I'm going to show you that one again because it is a little bit complicated. This is where we get a little bit fiddly and twisted up sometimes. So we go around the bottom one, around the 2, then around the 3. Then what we want to do is miss out the bottom one, go around the next 3, miss out the bottom 2, go around the top 3. Then because we've done that, we then want to just go around the top 2, fiddle fiddle, fiddly fiddly, around the 2, and then around the top 1. So that is how we go. I'm going to show you that just a couple more times so that you can see what I mean. Now that I've created that one, you can see that there's a bit of a gap, and watch what happens. As soon as I squash this down and flatten it out, I can push them close together and it just creates that really beautiful smooth kind of pattern. Makes a real difference with this pair. What I might do, there is a link to a set of 3 pliers, but it doesn't have the flat nosed ones. So what I can do is I can always add a link to the flat nosed pliers for you if you don't know where to find them. I get most of my supplies from eBay, and I think they're really good. So I can pop a link in there for you for a pair like this. It won't necessarily be this exact pair, but they will work. And they make the biggest difference to your work. So now I'm going to go again around the bottom 1, around the bottom 2, and around 3, and then we miss out the bottom 1 and go around 3, miss out the bottom 2 and go around the top 3, then we go in. Ooh, see, they get in the way sometimes. Ooh. Nope, on the wrong way. And around the 2, and then just around the top 1. And we've got our pattern starting to form. So again, with the pliers, squash it down, move it over, and we've got this beautiful pattern starting to emerge. If you look on the other side, that's where you can see the other pattern that we can also use. And there you go. So bring this one in again, just so you can see the final piece. Makes this wonderful pattern on both sides. So that's it for today. That's our 5-strand weaves. But as I said to you before, you can actually just add more strands to make it bigger, thicker, however you want. Experiment with it if you want to, but the more strands you use, the trickier and fiddlier it gets. And often you can find things going a bit wobbly and out of place, but just practice, keep practicing. So if you like what you see, please do subscribe to my channel. I add 1, sometimes 2 videos a week to teach you everything that I know, and I hope you enjoy them. And if you do, like this video, and I will catch you again soon. Thanks for watching.